women aren't just watching sports, they're actively shaping the fandom now. Brands need to treat women as core consumers, not just niche. That's just the biggest thing off the top. It means designing products for women's bodies. It means designing for women's biomechanics, injury risks. It's not a pink it and shrink it version that compromises performance. Seeing growing pressure here majorly. News came out this year that 6% of sports science and sports medicine research has been conducted on women athletes. So there's a major gap.
That is Mary Stanwick, sports and outdoor strategist at WGSN. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Create Tomorrow podcast. I'm your host, Cassandra Napoli, head of consumer forecasting at WGSN. Every 2 weeks, I will take you on a journey to examine how trends are translated into aesthetics and product design. In this episode, we'll hear from Mary Stanwick, sports and outdoor strategist at WGSN, who will explore how Gen Z is engaging with sports, both as participants and as spectators. We discuss how cost and climate are shifting their product design needs, their new metrics of success, and the role women fans are playing in wider sports culture. Mary, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Can you briefly share who you are and a bit about your career journey and what it is that you do at WGSN?
I'm a strategist on our sports and outdoor team here at WGSN, and I focus mostly on bringing sports insights to the platform. So I'm a product designer at heart. My background is in product design. I studied sports apparel design in school and kind of quickly fell into a love for performance design, and then spent most of my career outside of school as a footwear designer and materials specialist. I pull a lot of that background and what I've learned from my previous companies into my work here. So I try to give our readers the strongest, most relevant insights possible that matter for their actual day-to-day work.
I think your job is one of the coolest at WGSN. That's why I'm really excited about this, because you are responsible for sort of covering the industry at large, the sports sector, team sports, and sort of distilling that down into what it means for product design. Can you talk a little bit about your day-to-day, just out of curiosity? I'm fascinated by your job.
I get really excited by having a strong just awareness and presence of the sport industry, but figuring out how do those external factors actually apply to sports companies making product for on-field or on-pitch play. So it's not just what is happening from a regulation perspective or from media rights or sponsorships, licensing, all of these major influential factors, but it's figuring out how does that actually impact a player or a runner trying to beat a 4-minute mile? How does that impact somebody who is at the top of their game? And then how does that product design also filtrate down to somebody who's just trying to stay connected to their game from a lifelong perspective? I personally grew up as a dancer my whole life, and I don't dance professionally by any means, but I love to stay connected to it through dance classes in the city. And I feel like that is the split of my work. I get to write for people and for designers making product for that peak rockette dancer individual, or all the way down to the person taking a ballet class for the first time, just feel connected to a community and to wellness.
I want to start by asking you to sort of paint a picture of the sports sector at large as it relates to Gen Z, both as participants first and then as spectators later on. We'll get to that. So to start, how does Gen Z participation in sport look different maybe than in the past, our predecessors?
As participants, I would say Gen Z is really focused and gravitating towards experiences that feel accessible and social, maybe low pressure. Things think run clubs, climbing, padel, even actually combat training, high rocks. These hybrid sports are becoming really popular. Think Barry's Boot Camp as well, Rumble Fitness. These are things that Gen Z loves that they can dip in and out of, and that they're able to personalize, turn into a social moment rather than just for a competitive perspective. Participation is also pretty fluid, I would say. I think that instead of focusing on one sport, Gen Z is really bouncing between formats based on mood or community involvement, even convenience and aesthetics influence them a good bit. I'm looking at you, the Pilates princesses. They blend training styles. They're showing up with friends and they're drawn to environments that feel inclusive, expressive, and low effort, definitely.
You mentioned Pilates princesses, and that's such a aesthetic trend on TikTok, right? So I teach trend forecasting for a lot of different colleges, and pretty much everyone turned in a presentation this semester about the Pilates princess aesthetic, right? It's everywhere. It's pink. It's even like baby blue. There's been elements of that. You can do it at home. You can go to a studio. There's a whole lifestyle attached to it, right? How do you think that type of aesthetic trend as it relates to fitness or sport goes on to impact product design from your perspective? Like, how do you sort of map those signals?
I think that there is a common belief from a sports product design perspective that product designers are very focused on utility and on these performance indicators like speed, lightweight, durability. These things are champion over any other feature. And a lot of product designers, in some ways, I don't want to say neglect, but it's not their top priority to consider aesthetics. What we learn from Gen Z is that aesthetic matters just as much to them as functionality. And of course, they're not going to use a product if it's completely unfunctional. But I think in many ways, people are willing to compromise lightly, not majorly. They're willing to compromise lightly on performance in order to accommodate for aesthetic because they're really driven by having aesthetic pieces in their total life. I do think that we have also been tracking a lot around unglamorous wellness and around products. You're seeing all over on TikTok people showing their unglamorous products that change their day-to-day life. And sports products have a huge part of that. But anywhere that they can, they are finding things like even bala bangles have like exploded just because of how accessible they are in price point, not too expensive and aspirational, but still like higher than your standard pair of wrist weights. And then they're really beautiful. And there's something that you could wear out on a walk. Like a lot of women are gravitating towards walking as their wellness and as their exercise. And it's something you can wear that looks like an accessory rather than an appendage or a ball and chain dragging behind you.
That's so true. I think like Aura Ring also speaks to that. Like it's quite dainty,
Totally.
and, there's an element of beauty to it. You mentioned
Totally.
metrics as well. I want to go back to that because what are those metrics that Gen Z are using to sort of track their performance, success, whether that's in their own individual fitness journeys or at a sort of more professional level?
Gen Z overall is gravitating more towards experience and total wellness as a metric rather than maybe really specific levels of metric from like blood flow, heart rate, etc. They still care about those things. I think all of us are like innately curious to know every little thing. Like they're really wanting to know how their sleep is impacting their mental well-being, not just their physical energy from a day-to-day lifestyle.
So if you were a product designer and you know that information, what do you do about it? How do you design products to meet those goals or KPIs that Gen Z are setting for
Yeah.
themselves?
So when we're talking about what product designers really need to be doing, it is a little bit of yes and. It is a little bit of like really creating holistic product offerings where they're bringing those peak design performance indicators that you have on your like higher price point options and just identifying those champion qualities, bringing them down to a more accessible level. So my biggest piece that I think I've been tackling a lot has been to figure out what are the main priorities for your brand, your design ethos of what you're trying to achieve. Find a way to bring that detail into every level of price point that you're designing for, and then really fight for it. I think it's really important to fight for the details that matter, to fight for those key performance indicators that matter, and then from there, bring it to your entire range plan and have a little bit of something for everyone. Because the truth is no generation is a monolith anymore, and we're not really able to prescribe that with any one solution. So we kind of have to be doing everything everywhere all at once in this environment.
insane advice, right? Like, just be everything to everyone.
Be everything to everyone. It's really tough.
You mentioned price. I think that's an interesting conversation to have. In my own reporting on Gen Z and my own forecasting, like they are focused on price and value. When you think about the backdrop of a cost crisis and tariffization, as you said, and just rising inflation, all these factors, how does that impact the way that they participate in sport and the types of garments and items that they're buying to aid those journeys, those health journeys that they're on?
Rising costs are really reshaping everyone's relationship with their purchasing and with what products they think they need versus what are just a luxury. Even from a sports perspective in youth sports, the costs have risen in youth sports 46% since 2019. Pretty astronomical. Parents are putting $40 billion USD a year into youth sports. And this, like, I geeking out about it because I just wrote this report about youth sports and how children are really forced into specialization pretty early in life. And I think that's why we're seeing Gen Z so against maybe hyper specialization, but rising costs have definitely impacted overall purchasing behaviors and how people relate to their brands and to their products overall. And I think the biggest opportunity there is for brands to focus on accessibility and adaptability, really focusing on products that grow, whether it's with kids or just with an athlete later in their life. How can you design for those multi-sport products that support sport switching, not specialization, thinking about tools that offer that pro level feedback, like I was talking about earlier, but without maybe that pro level price tag because we're all hypersensitive to price, maybe more than we've ever been. And it's really just about keeping people involved in sport and that being a focus for design for not just Gen Z, but for everyone.
To think that price is one factor that's actually hindering that ability is actually really sad and, limiting to them. So I think that product design is probably the answer, right? It's that having that
Absolutely.
co-created product. Is there any examples that you can give that speak to that?
From an adult perspective, we actually talk a lot about the running shoe market has been major for not just runners, but for people who want to participate in sport across the spectrum. And so we've been seeing a rise in shoes that are available not just for running, but also to cross styles of training. And so people will wear running shoes to a boxing class, to a run club, to play padel in all in the same week. And so we're really seeing a focus and design around these shoes that are at more of an entry level price point, can be used for a lot of different activities, but it's maybe not the perfect tool for any of those individual activities. We're definitely seeing a lot of design for modularity as well, things that you can put together, take apart, swap a new piece on in order to have that experience. And definitely hugely in the wellness space, this is existing. So when you're thinking about foam rollers, things more in that like recovery zone, we're seeing recovery for any specific need all in one product. So honestly, it's everywhere and it's only going to continue to permeate.
Climate change, like obviously we just talked about cost, which is quite a macro impact on sport, or has quite a macro impact on sport. But climate change is really set to impact how, where, why we play sport, who gets to play sport based on where you are regionally, right? It connects back to a macro trend that we've maybe highlighted a couple years ago, 2, 3 years ago, which was nocturnal living, right? So as certain climates warm, it's going to be impossible for young people or any people, of all ages to participate in sport during the daytime. So we're going to start to see nighttime run leagues, which are run clubs that we've seen, nighttime participation in the Chili Peppers, for example. It did like a nighttime game where they hosted, where they wore, what was it, like glow in the dark uniforms or something like that to stand out. So what's your take on nocturnal sports, and is this set to rise? Are you seeing it? And what does that mean for product design, most importantly, in the next couple of
Yeah,
years?
totally. I think we're seeing this shift everywhere in sport. Formula One has been racing at night for years, and places like Qatar, Singapore, Bahrain, they're dodging the worst part of the heat in those areas, and they're also catering to global time zones simultaneously. So I totally agree that this is coming through and across the sports spectrum. We're seeing midnight runners, like you said, running after dark in Miami in these high heat places. There's also this awesome high stakes par three golf league that's called the Grass League, and they play at night. And it's becoming kind of a place that's not just practical due to climate change. It's also becoming a whole new vibe of sport. Whereas, like golf, you see as something in many ways as traditional, quiet, respectful. There's a certain dress code involved. And the Grass League throws that all out the window. And they're creating a new environment in the nighttime space that unlocks a more social festival like atmosphere with maybe lights, DJs, and drinks, and a bit of a rowdier crowd, which I think golf has been needing for a while. So it's really exciting to see those opportunities come out of maybe a turbulent issue because we are seeing, like, in major sports like tennis, we're seeing a lot of matches get delayed or postponed due to climate change, players passing out, spectators passing out due to extreme heat. So it's important to be finding these new pathways and also as product designers having a fun new playground. And there's really just a new way to interpret the needs for not just the athlete, but the spectator and the experience as a whole, and new partnership opportunities as well, which is really exciting.
I want to talk about this. Like, we're recording this in December as we sit here. It's late December,
Yes.
and January always is that sort of early year ritual of I'm going to the gym, gyms become crowded, fitness becomes top of mind. I was just thinking, what does that early year ritual look like for Gen Z sports participants, as participants, fitness enthusiasts? Is this something that they're actively engaged in, or is it something that is just embedded into their lifestyle, or is it a mixture of both, perhaps?
Yeah, I really think that for Gen Z, they're not sold by the new year, new me rush that many are sold. I don't think that they're chasing intense resolutions. When you think about the landscape of Gen Z and the things that they've experienced in their lifetimes, they've had a good level of disappointment, shall we say? Lightly, maybe. They've experienced a lot of letdowns, and so I think this whole concept of new year, new me resolutions brings a lot of expectation and burden in a way that Gen Z kind of rejects. So I think that they're looking more for routines that feel sustainable as well as mentally supportive rather than trying to reach a certain metric.
It's a great answer. I think it's really healthy, actually, that idea that longevity is embedded into their ritual and routine naturally, as opposed to that like sort of damaging expectation to like rebuild yourself in the new year that nobody really wants to do, right? Like, it's just too much pressure. I want to move on to spectator quickly, or spectator sports quickly, because I am interested in how Gen Z is participating as viewers of these sports, right? So you recently wrote about how young people, younger generations, do not want to commit to 3+ hours every week watching sports games, and how it has led to major popularity in shorter formats, settings such as Formula One's Race in 30, which is a condensed highlight reel, essentially. How else are Gen Z consuming sports content at the moment?
They're gravitating towards flexible, snackable formats. So they love like bite-sized bits of information. In many ways, first the vinification of our minds to the TikTokification and everything. Like, we love Drive to Survive style documentaries if we want more information. But when it comes to the actual game, I think that they're looking for those flexible formats, and they want mic'd up moments. They want behind the scenes. They want to see something that's funny, powerful, emotional, without full-time commitment. And I really think that they're looking a lot through YouTube and TikTok for this. YouTube is huge from streaming perspective now, where more people are going there than Netflix and many other places. And streaming is rewriting what the fandom looks like. So because everything is available everywhere and bases are less tied by location, by regions, spanning storylines, values across leagues and teams. They're not focused so much on whoever's local. They're really focused on who has really interesting highlights and storylines and creators and social content. So the engagement is super strong, but it's happening in this really fast, portable way. And they want to have creator commentary. They want to have a global fandom. They want to have the occasional big live moment, but they're not really gonna park in front of one team's broadcast every single week as much as they used to.
I think what you were saying about the TikTokification of sports content for Gen Z is really interesting. And, this is a big year for sport coming up. We've got Olympics in February. We've got FIFA World Cup. There's going to be some big moments this year. Last Olympics, which was the Summer Olympics, we saw like Alona Mar come into her own and really become a creator in her own right, documenting her Olympic journey. And then that influence had essentially ballooned outwards, and she went on to Dancing with the Stars, and there was a Mattel Barbie doll created or modeled after her. What do you think, if you were advising brands on what to look out for this year, what do you think the big moments will be, and what do you think will kind of take off on social media, or perhaps who? Are there any Gen Z rising stars that you think they should pay attention to as we near 2026?
Yeah, I think that the Olympics are obviously going to be massive, and I am really excited with Milan Cortina coming up that they have a TikTok creator collective that NBC has hired as correspondents, just like any other sport professional media person. And it creates this multi-layered broadcast environment where athletes get to turn into lifestyle creators overnight. And then also lifestyle creators get to turn into sports experts overnight. So we're going to see that at Milan, and it's definitely going to continue through the year into the FIFA World Cup in North America, where the tournament is going to be just as much about clips and creator culture as the matches themselves.
I wanted to quickly ask about women spectators as well. That's been a hot topic, as you can imagine. For the last couple of years now, we've discussed this quite a bit on Events and Culture, where I spend most of my time, but nearly 75% of women globally now identify as avid sports stans, which is a stunning 10% increase in just the last 3 years. This obviously presents lots of cross-industry collaboration opportunities, particularly with fashion and beauty. We've seen this. Skims was probably one of the first to really come out and say, hey, we're going to partner with the WNBA players. They've teamed up with the Volleyball League. What do you think? What's the biggest shift or opportunity in terms of brand opportunities, product design opportunities now that so many women are avid sports fans?
I mean, the biggest shift is that women aren't just watching sports, they're actively shaping the fandom now. Brands need to treat women as core consumers, not just niche. That's just the biggest thing off the top. It means designing products for women's bodies. It means designing for women's biomechanics, injury risks. It's not a pink it and shrink it version that compromises performance. Seeing growing pressure here majorly. News came out this year that 6% of sports science and sports medicine research has been conducted on women athletes. So there's a major gap. And a lot of really cool organizations are jumping in to help bridge this gap, from the soccer world, also from Gatorade. They're buying into the research, and Voice and Sport all are really dialing into this. At the same time, expression is a huge part of sports for women, and it's a huge part of why women are leaning in. So from WNBA tunnel fits, redefining courtside fashion, thinking about beauty, nail collaborations like the Glamnetic and Fanatics drop. Women's sports are a style engine. The opportunity is really twofold, just to design for need and design for expression. I was going to even say earlier, the Women's Professional Baseball League is having their inaugural season in 2026 with 4 city-branded teams. We're going to continue to see Unrivaled grow. We're going to see really amazing new franchises within the NWSL. We're really looking forward to the PWHL. All of these leagues for women are growing at exponential levels, and we're seeing really exciting brand partnerships in that as well, between Sephora having major sponsorships in women's leagues, and also brands like Skims participating and providing for not just Olympic athletes, but now many women's sports leagues. So really exciting things ahead that get to turn the surge of engagement for women into a long-term cultural and commercial momentum.
That was beautifully said. I love the idea that sports are a style engine. What a nice way to put it. Like always, I ask all of my guests who is somebody that they admire that is creating a new version, an inspiring version of tomorrow that you find to be really, resonant to you. So who is your pick, Mary?
I'm totally loving the women of the NFL right now, or WAGs. I know there's maybe some discourse right now on if WAGs is the appropriate term, but women of the NFL who they're taking their platform to a whole nother level. Some of my personal favorites are Allison Cooch, Kylie Kelsey, who both of their podcasts I'm a really big fan of. And, I love to hear them talk about anything from sports to motherhood and everything in between. Also, as a New England Patriots fan, I love Ann Michael May. She's been doing Bakemas every day of December on TikTok. She's Drake May, the quarterback's wife. And you better believe I've seen every video. She is so engaging. She's super kind. The comment section is hilarious, joking that Tom Brady's ex-wife Giselle never did anything like this for us. So she's creating a whole new platform. It's amazing. So I'm just a huge fan of women creators who are breaking barriers, making us all feel welcome in the greater sports fandom.
And the way that we started this conversation before we were recording was that I am not necessarily an avid sports fan, but I know a lot about sports because of these women. And I think that's the biggest change, right? It's bringing somebody like me in who's not necessarily tuning in every, I don't know what day of the week is the NFL on Sundays.
Sunday.
I don't tune in every Sunday to watch the game, but I'm actively engaging with the league because of these women whom I follow them too. I know exactly what you're talking about. So I think that's the biggest shift, and that's super interesting as
It's really exciting.
An opportunity for brands.
Absolutely.
Thank you to my guest, Mary Stanwick, sports and outdoor strategist at WGSN. If you're a WGSN subscriber, look out for more trends at WGSN.com. If you're not a subscriber, please come and discover our services. We'll be back with our next episode soon. In the meantime, you can catch the CEO of WGSN, Carla Buzasci, next week on our other podcast, Lives of Tomorrow. I'm your host, Cassandra Napoli. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast, and see you next time.